Welcome back, everyone, to Boss Economics World, your one-stop shop for exposing the absurdities of government mismanagement while breaking down the complex world of economics into something you can actually understand. Today we've got a show that'll have you wondering if someone at the White House didn't major in tying their own shoelaces. That's right, we are diving deep into the Trump administration's latest penalty mania, aluminum tariffs. These are shaking up the economy like it's a can of soda about to explode, and unfortunately for all of us, the result isn't going to be some refreshing splash of common sense. Okay, let's give it to you straight. Trump slapped a 25% tariff on aluminum imports from Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on China. Oh boy, it didn't take long for alarm bells to ring across the aluminum industry. Now, one might think, oh great, America is going to protect its own aluminum producers, hooray. Wrong. If the goal was protecting American aluminum jobs, this move is about as effective as swatting at flies with a wrecking ball. Why? Because the U.S. aluminum industry has been heavily reliant on imports for years. That's right. Almost half, about 44%, of the aluminum used in the U.S. in 2023 was imported. And guess who sent over more than half of these imports? Canada. Our friends up north, who aren't exactly competitors, they are crucial to America's own manufacturing pipeline. So when you place tariffs on Canadian aluminum, you're not exactly sticking it to some foreign adversary, you're more like shooting yourself in the foot and then wondering why you can't walk straight. Alright, let's rewind for a second. These aluminum tariffs are just one chapter in Trump's wider trade war, a misguided attempt to beat the economy into submission for the sake of America's supposed economic dominance. You see, Trump and his tariff-happy advisors have adopted this notion that the U.S. is continuously getting the short end of the stick on trade. So their logic goes something like, we'll just slap tariffs on foreign imports, yay, problem solved. Now, to give Trump a little credit here, China's practices in dumping cheap aluminum into the U.S. market have been a legitimate problem. China's habit of subsidizing its industries, offering non-market competition, has undeniably hurt global markets. And standing up to China in this respect makes sense on the surface, sounds logical, right? But blanket tariffs on major aluminum partners like Canada and Mexico, now that's where things start walking beyond the edge of reason and straight into, what planet are we living on, territory. For all you everyday folks out there who think this doesn't mean much to you, let me wake you up with a dose of hard reality. Aluminum is absolutely everywhere. It's in your cars, the planes you fly in, food packaging, the beer can you're sipping, and even the buildings around you. The impact of these aluminum tariffs is going to be felt whether you're in the finance sector or working on an assembly line, or just trying to grab a Coke without breaking the bank. And here's the real kicker, American manufacturers rely on imported aluminum. They need that supply chain coming in from Canada and other countries to keep costs low, production smooth, and jobs steady. Think about it, if U.S. manufacturers suddenly have to pay 25% more for some of the aluminum they need, they aren't going to sit back and absorb that cost. No, they're going to either raise prices or, worse, cut jobs. According to Morgan Stanley, if you throw a tariff on all those essential imports, instead of protecting American aluminum producers, you're strangling them by cutting off their affordable supplies of the very metal they need to stay competitive. It's like trying to run a marathon while handing out ankle weights to all your athletes. Genius, right? In response, the Aluminum Association has come out and begged Trump to exempt Canada from the tariffs. Let's be clear here, folks, begged. Not politely suggested, but begged like your dog when you've got a slice of pizza. They know that if Canadian aluminum isn't exempted, it could spell disaster for American jobs. The Aluminum Association is urging Trump to focus on unfairly traded Chinese aluminum, because that's where the real problem lies. Meanwhile, leaving Canada and Mexico in the mix will only end up hurting domestic manufacturers who need aluminum to stay profitable. Why pick a fight with your friends when you've already got an enemy at the gates? Now, here's the thing about economic ripple effects, each decision, big or small, sends out waves that hit every part of the system. You won't just see this tariff drama limited to jobs within the aluminum sector, oh no. This has a much broader chain reaction that will hit manufacturing, transportation, food, and beverage industries, and households across the country. Brace yourselves, this is gonna sting. Steelworkers, car manufacturers, airplane builders, food packagers, even the construction industry, they're all at serious risk of price hikes, job losses, and potential ripple effects that could shake regional economies to their core. Here are some cold, hard facts. In 2021, the U.S. aluminum industry directly employed 166,000 people. But if the industry can no longer efficiently source affordable raw materials, many of these jobs could disappear. The auto industry, one of the largest consumers of aluminum, employs over 940,000 people in the U.S. alone. Auto giants like Ford and GM, already operating on razor-thin profit margins, could easily see skyrocketing costs with tariffs on aluminum imports. And do you think automakers are going to eat those costs? No way. They'll hike car prices, meaning workers lose, consumers lose, and everyone paying more for their next vehicle is going to feel the aftermath. The U.S. construction industry is a $1.4 trillion sector that gobbles up aluminum like it's going out of style. Raise the cost, and you're pushing up the price of all those homes, buildings, and bridges we rely on. And guess what? Rising costs usually mean company layoffs. If you think these tariffs are a purely domestic issue, think again. We're not working in a vacuum here. Like everything in today's globalized economy, U.S. tariff policies send shockwaves internationally. Look at Mexico, Canada, and even Europe. They're not sitting quietly as punching bags for Trump's trade tantrum. Canada has been one of the U.S.'s closest, most reliable trade partners. And how do you think they're feeling about being slapped with Trump's aluminum tax? Exactly. Sooner or later, this is going to provoke tit-for-tat retaliations. Canada could easily return fire with their own tariffs on U.S. exports. And here's a fun fact, the U.S. exports over $365 billion worth of goods to Canada each year. You don't want to start that tariff war. The same goes for Mexico, which has already signaled it's not going to take this lying down. We don't need a full-blown trade war setting off economic tremors just as we're struggling to return to stability post-COVID. Worse yet, the U.S. risks ostracizing itself unnecessarily in a world where alliances, trade, security, and geopolitical cooperation are more crucial than ever. It's like trying to win every poker hand by flipping the table. You might end the game, but you won't be invited back. Here's where the whole thing begins to break down into utter madness. These tariffs were supposed to protect American jobs. And yet, all the data points to them achieving the exact opposite. If you put a 25% tariff on Canadian aluminum, U.S. manufacturers, who need aluminum components to run, will end up paying more. They'll see profit margins shrink, production costs skyrocket, and jobs get slashed because they can't afford to stay competitive anymore. See the paradox? You're so busy trying to save jobs that you're actually setting off a domino chain that will kill more jobs than it saves. Brilliant. Take a look at what happened with U.S. steel tariffs not so long ago. The 2002 steel tariffs under Bush tell the whole story. Before long, 200,000 American jobs were lost, not in steel but in industries using steel, because manufacturers couldn't afford to pay the markup. Sound familiar? Now fast forward to 2023, tariffs on aluminum from Canada and Mexico will deliver a similar blow, but this time to all the American industries that depend on aluminum, from food packaging companies to car makers. So what do we do now? How do we get out of this mess before everything crashes down? First of all, let's be blunt, tariffing friends like Canada and Mexico should be out of the question. Exempting these partners while targeting China, the actual culprit of global aluminum dumping, makes far more sense. Trump's administration needs to be careful not to confuse fair competition with economic warfare against your closest neighbors and trade allies. The tariffs should laser focus on unfair trading practices rather than blasting holes in a wider manufacturing supply chain that the U.S. itself depends on. Moreover, it's high time the U.S. government took a serious look at incentivizing domestic aluminum production in a way that incorporates long-term sustainability, not outdated protectionist tactics that threaten jobs across a slew of industries. At the end of the day, this aluminum tariff debacle highlights one core truth: overplaying the protectionist hand hurts everyone. Trying to save jobs via punitive tariffs while ignoring the basic realities of American supply chains is an economic trap that's only going to backfire. Let's be clear, these tariffs were not thought through. They weren't delivered with precision. It was more like a sledgehammer to an already fragile system. If the Trump administration wants to keep the American economy competitive, we can't pretend we're living in 1950 where blanket tariffs could solve all our industrial problems. Today's economy is far too integrated, too complex, too globalized. It's time to drop the sledgehammers, listen to the folks in the manufacturing front lines, and craft a real strategy that doesn't send aluminum-dependent industries over the edge. So there you have it, folks. Another deep dive into economic policy gone astray. Be sure to subscribe to Boss Economics World because next up, we're roasting the government's trillion-dollar tax cuts gone haywire. Until next time, stay sharp, and remember, the economy's always in your hands too.